This is KUGAN CASSIUS for Eiffel TV in association with Macklin's Gym Marbella. We're in San Carlo here for a Scott Quigg media lunch ahead of the Mammoth Clash on the 27th of February at the Manchester Arena. With me I've got Adam Smith. How are you, Adam?
I'm very well, thank you, KUGAN. I'm delighted to be back in Manchester, and I can't wait for next week because fight weeks here are fantastic. I mean, we've been here so many times, haven't we, with the likes of Ricky Hatton and David Haye and Joe Calzaghe and so forth, and Nassim Hamid and Nigel Benn back in the day. It's a great fight city. Obviously, Carl Froch and George Groves had their first epic here. Scott Quigg's lit up the arena with Anthony Croller, of course, you know, sort of side by side, and now this Frampton Quigg. It's a mouth-watering one. I think one that we've all been waiting for some time.
This fight is an indication of persistence does eventually pay off, because there are a lot of super fights that we've craved over the years. Obviously, quite notably the Brooke Khan thing, which isn't going to happen this year, but Quigg Frampton was always one of those super fights that we always wanted for a long time. It never happened, but it finally got there. When the two teams sat down, sensible discussions happened. It proves that these fights can happen.
Well, Mayweather-Pacquiao was made, and everyone was sort of writing that off, and it finally got done. So yeah, if that can be made, it sort of says anything can. We never saw Ricky Hatton fight Junior Witter. That was one I was always disappointed not to see come to fruition. But I think it's changed the boxing world. I think the demand is there for these big fights. You know, Anthony Joshua in with Charles Martin in April, Amir Khan in with CANELO in May. I mean, they're mouth-watering stories, aren't they? And I think that, you know, we've really got a drive now in our sport, and I think we need to keep that going. But Frampton Quigg, fantastic. You know, two world champions at the very top of their game. You know, it's been years in the making. You know, everybody's wanted to see what would happen. Carl Frampton with the pedigree, with the class, with the amateur, with the all the sort of build up in Ireland, and Scott Quigg, who's come through a very different way. Utterly dedicated, sort of what a consummate professional. Have gloves, will travel. He's gone over and sparred in America. You know, he's Joe Gallagher's stable's absolutely flying, and he's done so much in the last 2 or 3 years to have the momentum swing a bit in his favour. But then Frampton has got all the qualities and the skills, and it's just a fascinating pick and fight. I mean, I know my boxing team, the 10 of us, we're all split. You know, everybody's, you know, one day you wake up thinking, oh no, I think Frampton's just got that extra, but then you think, no, Quigg might knock him out. You know, you just don't know, and I think that's the beauty of fights like this, and we want more of them.
Do you believe that their last two fights, with what happened in the first round with Frampton and Gonzalez, and the way that Quigg dealt with Martinez, has kind of changed people's perceptions of who's going to win the fight?
Very much so, absolutely. I think most people felt Carl Frampton would beat Scott Quigg as time ticked on, but you know, Quigg's improved, and as I said, he's got that buzzing stable around him, the likes of Crawler, of the Smith brothers, of, you know, Joe's just got the Ring Magazine Trainer of the Year. You know, on the other side you've got Shane McGuigan, and emerging as the great new hope, you know, with the likes of David Haye and George Groves flocking to him. So there's two buzzing camps, but I think, yeah, you're right. I think Frampton would have been on most people's choice, you know, over the sort of course of the last 2 or 3 years, but maybe in the last 6 to 9 months things have changed. You've seen Carl put down a couple of times over in Texas. Quigg was phenomenal against Kiko Martinez, but you know, then remember, Frampton did beat Martinez twice, so you know, how good was Martinez that night? But it was terrific what Quigg did. So yeah, I think now people are thinking it's sort of swinging to Scott's favour, and it's in Manchester. But then the Frampton lot have sold half the arena, so I think it's going to feel a big mixture, maybe slightly more of an Irish crowd there. So listen, it's just one we can't wait for.
The big news this week, and huge news it is, that our very own Anthony Joshua, which will be his 16th professional fight, will take on newly crowned IBF heavyweight champion Charles Martin. Let's just cut straight to chase. Is he ready for a world title shot?
That's the big question, isn't it? Risky business in boxing. And I think boxing, as I've always said, KUGAN, is about two things. It's about timing and it's about levels. I think Joshua is easily, if on the level of Charles Martin and maybe even beyond it, but timing I think is absolutely perfect, which is why I think Anthony Joshua's been made the favourite already in this fight. Look, he had the rough second round against Dylan White, but he came through it. He's 15-0. On paper, to go into a world title fight in your 16th fight, especially as a heavyweight, does seem too soon. But you've got to look what's out there. You know, Charles Martin is a big 6'5" southpaw who's undefeated, but you know he's fought limited opposition. You know, he's been in the military. He's one of these sort of American athletes that's come into boxing, and he had quite a fortunate win over Vyacheslav Glazkov. I was there at ringside. You know, Glazkov had the injury. Martin was probably on top the first couple of rounds, but you couldn't read too much into it. So I think this could be a masterstroke from Eddie Hearn and the Matchroom team. It could be a stroke of genius if Anthony Joshua does pull it off on April the 9th. But it's a big if. He's dangerous, Martin. He can really punch. He's got a lot of power. He is undefeated, and he's going to come over full of confidence. So it's a really tough one, and I think we all only know the answer again on the night. But it is a risk. I think it's a risk that might pay off, though.
I mean, Eddie Hearn made a good point, and he said that if Charles Martin wasn't IBF champion and he was being announced as an opponent for the 9th, I think you'd get a general moaning of the opponent with Charles Martin being relatively unknown to the UK, shall we say, casual boxing fans. So the fact that he has got a world title now changes things because people are saying it's risky. But beforehand, if he wasn't world champion, would that have been a risky fight? Would people have been pleased with that opponent?
It's amazing what a world champion IBF holder can suddenly do, isn't it? Look, you know, we don't know how good Charles Martin is. That's being honest. You know, he's trained by Henry Tillman. He's got a good backing behind him. He works out in Big Bear in California. He's physically great. I spent a lot of time with him in New York before the Glazkov fight. He's a very polite guy. Reminded me a bit of the character of Lennox Lewis, sort of laid back and sort of, you know, happy to be there and just get on. And he had an opportunity and he grasped it. And now he's a world champion. But I think, yes, you're right. If suddenly Eddie had announced, you know, Charles Martin instead of Dylan White, people are going, who's he? You know, but you know, the record is good, and he's. I think what it probably tells us, Kugan, is that it's a very volatile, unpredictable division, the heavyweights, and we've got three of the best in Tyson Fury, who's obviously top of the pile because he beat Vladimir Klitschko in that phenomenal performance. We're not quite sure what's going to happen next. Is he going to have the rematch? It's all gone a little bit quiet. We wait for news on that. David Haye fires back just at the right time. Good timing on David. You know, lights it up again with that big win, albeit in limited opposition, but it was an eye-catching win, wasn't it, in front of a big viewing audience. And I think that David and Joshua is a huge fight down the line. So three of them are from this side of the pond. Then you've got Deontay Wilder, you've got Alexander Povetkin, you've got, you know, Joseph Parker over in the other side of the world. You've got a lot of guys who are out there and possibly could all beat each other. So I think it may be a bit of a merry-go-round. Who's going to be the last one standing? I'll tell you what it is the glamorous division is back in boxing, and I think that's fantastic.
When I spoke to Anthony Joshua roughly around 3 weeks ago, and I think the Charles Martin fight was an option, but not a stronger possibility than it has recently become. His argument about not fighting someone like Charles Martin would be that it would sort of stop his progress. He's only had 15 fights. If he wins the world title, which we hope he does on the 9th, then there's no looking back, and he'll have to, like I said, he'll be filled with mandatories and having to fight top-ranked world heavyweight guys.
But then I think Anthony Joshua had a fast track to the top, you know, at the Worlds and then at the Olympics. He was dealing with, you know, big challenges then as an amateur and quickly. So I think that's a little bit what's happening here. You know, he's had his sort of the nursery slopes. He had his 14th fight. He had to walk through the fire a bit against Dylan White, didn't he? But he probably proved something to himself that night, that, you know, he could come through an onslaught. And I think, you know, what people aren't saying here is about Dylan White. And, you know, Dylan White was written off before that fight. Everyone thought AJ would blow him out in a round. But Dylan White came good that night, and he came strong, and he'll come again. And I think there's probably not much of a gap between Dylan White and all the other sort of world contenders. So you go from a British title to a world title, it may not be such a massive jump, but I think Joshua, if he wins on April the 9th, which obviously the team expect him to do, and he goes on, I think that he'll be able to deal with what's in front of him, because I think he likes the challenge, he likes the competition, and it will probably see the best out in Joshua. But as I said, they're all pretty unpredictable, these fights, so the best thing is let's get them all on. That's what we want.
Obviously, but ultimately you would, like I said, you would admit that come April the 9th will tell, but at the moment it is a risk and a gamble for Anthony Joshua's career.
Of course it's a risk. It's a big risk. We don't know, okay? He'd not gone beyond 3 rounds before Dylan White, and Dylan White shook him in the second. There's no question about that. He was in a bit of trouble, and he got through it. If Charles Martin gets him hurt, and Charles Martin can really bang, and he's 6'5", he's a southpaw, that's going to be difficult getting sparring like that. It is a risk. Of course it's a risk. But you've got to take these sort of steps. And if Anthony Joshua is going to become the superstar that everybody believes he's going to, and I've always thought Joshua, he ticks every box. He's a great guy. He does everything right with the media. He gets in the ring. He's ferocious. He's got to work on certain things, adaptability a little bit, what we saw from Dylan White. But ultimately, he looks like he's got the full package, Anthony Joshua. He's got to prove it now that he can do it at top level. I don't think it's too soon for this test. And if he does lose, he loses, and it's a loss. I mean, Lennox Lewis got knocked out by Oliver McCall, and he got knocked out by Hasim Ratman, and righted both those wrongs. He's the greatest heavyweight we've ever produced. So, if Joshua does lose at some point, it's not the end of the world. But I think this is a risk definitely worth taking, because I think Charles Martin is probably the most beatable of the big names out there, and it's a world title. And when do you get that chance? What if Martin had fought Wilder? They'd unified that. Say Wilder would have beaten him. Wilder and Fury had the belts. It could take a lot longer for Joshua. I'd like to see Joshua have this chance now. If he can win the world title, that brings the possibility of unifications with Tyson Fury, the challenges of David Haye coming out. I think it's going to be terrific in the next 2 or 3 years.
Excuse me. Obviously, recently just announced as well, and it was quite a bit of a bombshell when it was announced that Amir Khan will take on Sal Alvarez, CANELO, May the 7th in Las Vegas. Obviously, we were kind of hoping and wondering why this Brook deal hadn't been done, but obviously there was things happening behind the scenes to lead into what we're going to see on May the 7th. But in your opinion, has Khan made the right decision there?
It's another risk, isn't it? You've got the Joshua Martin fight, you've got this, and this is what we want to see. We want to see fighters taking the plunge, and that is exactly what Amir Khan's done. I'm sure I've told you, and I talked to Eddie, and I talked to Amir and Kel and everybody, that I wanted to see Brook Khan more than anybody on June the 4th at Wembley. And Kel wanted it and Amir wanted it. There's no question that the fighters want it. But obviously there's a lot of things to go through. There's the politics, there's a financial deal, there's everything that's got to be absolutely right from both sides. And I think that Amir's team always felt that they wanted to conquer America and they wanted to really make their name. And obviously fighting the likes of Devon Alexander, as great a performance as that was, and Chris Algieri, as sort of average a night as that was, I think that hasn't sort of quenched the thirst for Amir. He took that chance of going to America. He wanted Mayweather, he wanted Pacquiao. It hasn't happened. Look at this. What a curveball. What an opportunity to jump up 2 divisions to fight Sal Canelo Alvarez. I think it's an amazing opportunity for Amir. I think it's a win-win because he goes in there, he's got the speed, he's got the style to give Alvarez.
Sorry, Adam, we'll just pick that up. You said he's got the speed.
Amir Khan's got the speed, the style, the legs, the trainer and Virgil Hunter. He's got the ability to make life really awkward for Sal Canelo Alvarez. But has he got the strength? Has he got the solidness to get through 12 rounds against a very, very tough fighter, against a very good fighter who's obviously only been beaten by Mayweather? I was at the beginning when Oscar De La Hoya was going on about Sal Alvarez being the next coming, and I wasn't quite sure. I commentated on him very early in his career, and I thought he was good. I didn't know if he was going to be great. But obviously, he's proved over the last 2 or 3 years how good he is. The win over Cotto was excellent. And, the loss to Mayweather, no disgrace. Juan Manuel Marquez, the legendary Marquez lost to Mayweather. So, Mayweather, the greatest to lace him up in many, many years. I think that Alvarez loss was no bad thing. I think that, he's obviously the big hope. Mexico, Cinco de Mayo weekend in Vegas. I think it's a fascinating fight. I mean, you've got to give a Khan a chance. I mean, Alvarez is going to be a big favourite, no question, with the size advantage, with the fact that there's no signs of him in decline. He's still a young guy. But Amir, you just don't know what you're going to get with Amir, which I think is the beauty of him. You know, is he going to stick to a game plan against Devon Alexander, against Andreas Kotelnik, against those sort of guys? He was unbelievable. He was fantastic, in, out, beautiful boxing. Against Marcus Maidana, he showed his mettle as well. But against Danny Garcia, he got knocked out. Against Bredis Prescott, he got knocked out. Will he stay in the pocket a bit too long? I think it's going to be a very, very dangerous fight for him, a dangerous assignment for Amir Khan, but one that I cannot wait to see. I think it's a terrific story, and it's hats off to him for taking it.
Just finally on this Khan-Canelo situation, obviously the big talking point, or one of the big talking points about it, is that Khan is a welterweight at 147, Alvarez naturally at 154. The fight's being made at 155 for the middleweight title at 160. So how do you get your head around that?
I think maybe we don't think about that too much. I think what we think of is, Alvarez is a light middle, and Khan is a welter. But remember, Khan came from lightweight. He was a lightweight fighter, then he was light welterweight, and now in sort of the prestigious welterweight division. But he's a tall guy. I think he'll be fine. I was told that Chris Algieri came in very heavy on the night when he fought, so he'll been used to a little bit. But obviously, Algieri is no Alvarez. I mean, look, they wanted to make the fight at 154. I know that. I think they agreed on 155 to get it over the line. The Khan camp. It obviously favours Alvarez hugely, but it's not mission impossible. I don't think Khan, as I said, is without a chance. I think it just depends whether he can execute the game plan to perfection with the speed. He's certainly got the speed and swift of foot to give Alvarez all the trouble in the world. Everyone's talking, if Khan fought Mayweather, everyone would think Mayweather would win, but Khan will give him a really rough 4 or 5 rounds. I think he'll give Canelo a really rough 4, 5, 6 rounds. Can he do it for 12? That's the fascinating one. Listen, it's a win-win, as I said earlier. If he doesn't come through, no one's going to think, he's a failure or anything, because it was always a big risk. He comes back, and we'll get the fight with Kell Brook on at some point. I mean, it's going to happen, isn't it? So I think it's a great fight for Khan to take. Kell Brook's got to keep on his track. He's got to just defend his title. He's got a tough one, a banana skin. It's a fight everyone's saying he's going to win against Kevin Bizier. These are the ones you can come unstuck on. He's got to shine on March the 26th. I'm sure that Khan and Brook will share a ring at some point.
So, finally, we've just spoke about Quigg Frampton, Charles Martin versus Joshua, and Canelo Khan. Give me the 3 winners of this fight, Adam.
Oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that, Kugan. I've got to sit on the neutral fence. I think that it's really as a pick 'em with Frampton and Quigg. I think that Canelo starts a big favourite against Khan, no question, but it would not surprise me if Khan pulled it off or came very close to pulling it off. And with Anthony Joshua, I'd agree. I see Joshua as a favourite against Martin, but it's dangerous because we don't know what Anthony Joshua is like in a 12-round fight. We saw him in a tough one with Dylan White, but it didn't go into the latter rounds. What's he going to be like when he's under real pressure? What's he going to be like if he takes a big southpaw, shot from Charles Martin? How will he come through that? I don't know. My gut feeling is that Anthony Joshua and their team have made a really smart move here. I think Amir Khan's made a smart move for different reasons. I don't think the pressure's really on him as much. And as for Quigg and Frampton, you can't ask me that. We're at a Scott Quigg media day, right? He's sitting 5-10 feet away from me, Scott, right? I've got Carl Frampton's having his day tomorrow. We're up here all together next week. You can't ask me for a prediction on that one. My team are split on it. That's what I will tell you. I think one morning it's Frampton, one morning it's Quigg. It's that sort of a fight. I think it's going to come down to tactics on the night, to the 2 corners. I respect Joe Gallagher and Shane McGuigan equally, and I respect Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg equally as well. Frampton, as I said, the pedigree, the class, the skills, maybe the adaptability. Quigg, the momentum, the body shots, the power, the dedication too. It's all in the melting pot. We'll find out on February the 27th, Kugan.
I'm going to ask Johnny Nelson, because usually Johnny Nelson will he'll tell me, and usually 9 times out of 10 Johnny gets it wrong. So I've warned boxers, if Nelson picks you in a fight, be afraid.
Well, listen, I'm not. John is my friend, my colleague, whatever. Sometimes he's not the best picker of a fight. Listen, we all get them wrong. I thought Naz would beat Marco Antonio Barrera. I thought he was going to knock him out in 4 rounds. I thought Klitschko would have too much for Fury, but then most people did. That's why the beauty of boxing. Sometimes we put our hands up and say, we're absolutely wrong, and sometimes we maybe shouldn't just pick. We should let the fights get on. But that's the fun of it, isn't it? The subjectivity. You all think, oh, he's definitely going to win. People are saying to me, Alvarez would knock out Khan. It's a mismatch. Is it? We don't know. Was Fury Klitschko a mismatch? Everyone said before it was. Was it? Don't think so. That's what happens in boxing. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Adam, thank you very much for talking to IFL TV. And like I said, there's plenty of stuff coming up over the next few months. And, as a British boxing fan, well, it's just going to keep coming.
Well, it's a golden era, isn't it? 12 British, world champions. We're in Manchester. We've got Terry Flanagan, Anthony Crolla we haven't talked about. You look at the likes of Jamie McDonald and Lee Selby, who've done so well. James DeGale, who had that wonderful year, last year. It really is absolutely flying. It's buzzing. I was talking to Joe Gallagher about Stephen Smith. He's going to get a world title opportunity at some point. Liam, his brother's already there. It really is a fantastic time. And I think, success breeds success. I think you're going to see, a lot of the young come through now. They're looking up now to the likes of your Furies, your Joshuas, your DeGales, your Brooks, your Khans, and they look at them and they think, I want a piece of that. I think you're going to see a lot of amateur clubs really flourishing in the next sort of 2 to 3, 4 years. The Olympics did a marvellous job 2012, and I think you'll see more success at Rio. I think there's going to be some really good stories come out of there, and I think the whole future is really bright. And they're great guys as well, aren't they? You interview the likes of Scott or Luke or Carl or Anthony Joshua or Crolla, and they're just such nice, friendly guys, and they're so dedicated, and they've all got different stories and different characteristics. Selby's come from one way, and Josh Warrington with his Leeds fans has come another. Maybe they'll meet. That'll be another super fight this year, won't it? There's so many out there, KUGAN, that we're in the right sport, I think, at the moment.
All right, Adam, like I said, thank you very much for talking to us, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you soon in the next coming weeks.
How are you pudding?
Still sitting on the table.
I sit on the table. Go and enjoy, okay?
Thank you very much, Adam Smith.